Welcome to Live with Greg, or Live with Greg, depending on semantics.
All right, so we're here with the first episode of Season 9
I'm so honored.
with Paula.
With me.
And I'm not going to try your last name because now we've known each other 2 years now?
2 or 3. Maybe 2. Maybe 2.
3? Yeah, and I still can't pronounce your last name.
Mierzejewski.
Mierzejewski.
That's good enough. Good enough. I'll take it.
Okay, let's say Paula.
Let's say Paula.
All right.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about
Whatever your heart desires.
getting old.
Oh, I could do that good. I could do that really good.
All right.
I could do that really good. I was thinking last night as the cat was lost and I'm stumbling out in the nighttime. I almost fell in a hole. And I thought, God, my balance is off. And just feeling old in general. Thinking about, it's no longer middle age. Used to be early middle age. Now it's called early older age.
Really?
Yes.
Like in the professional realm?
No, I don't know about that, but I've heard the phrase now. You know how it used to be like when you're 40 was the new 60. Now it's like 80 is the new 50.
What does that mean? Like when you're 80?
You feel like you're 50.
So the things are getting better for older people.
Right.
You feel that's real?
No, I don't. It seems like when your number's up, your number's up.
Well, that's true.
I just read too many of these things about, people. You know how it used to be that people would retire at certain ages and then just save for their lives for those retirement years. And then I hear how instead they have heart attacks and they wind up in the hospitals, or they come down with really serious illness. And it's like, I'm learning that you can't just wait for that time, that you got to do it every day. It's not just, we're not here forever.
That's true.
We're not.
That is true. Have you known anyone who's passed away from COVID in the last 2 years? Like personally?
No, not personally. Personally, all my friends have been doing well, and their families are doing well, so no one personally.
Because that's kind of put a new wrinkle in things.
Oh, I think so, yeah. I see it, I see a lot of the COVID exhaustion. I see a lot of people exhausted from COVID. I see a lot of behavioral changes in kids because I work with kids. Like, I think kids are back a year. Like, preschool behavior is what I'm seeing in kindergarten. Like a kid the other day, 5 years old, jumped another kid, serious fighting. And I just think kids, after COVID and being home for, a year?
Year and a half?
Year and a half. It's been a long time for them to be out of socialization. And especially if they've only have been on like video or watching video games. I mean, then it's really hard because they're not even in the same reality as I am. And so I think it's been hard for kids.
Did you talk with the youngster who jumped the other?
Yeah, he just did it because he felt like doing it.
Really?
No impulse control.
Really? That is like, he was like, yeah, I felt like fighting.
Yeah.
So I did.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm wondering. They're keeping the privacy, of course, in check. But, there's that famous 50s movie, Bad Egg, I think it was, where that girl just was an evil young girl.
I never saw it, but I know enough bad eggs.
Well, okay, so is that, like, do you think that's real? Like, someone can be born to this world evil?
No, I don't. I think we all basically come into this world pretty darn good.
Innocent.
Yeah, I think we are. And I think it's outside forces that change us.
So with the 5-year-old child, 5 years of outside forces, that brought the individual to a point of like, hey, I wanted to fight, so...
Right.
Like, do you see anything as an academic in this realm of consciousness and well-being, right? Where you say, like, well, I could see that this is an element in this kid's life that...
Well, it's not a fair question, because I know elements in this kid's life already that definitely do warrant his behavior.
Okay, that's what I'm...
Yeah, no, he definitely has experiences to warrant this behavior. Yeah, which is kind of scary that it's so young and it comes out like that. It's kind of like when we start seeing it coming out that early, it's like, yeah, you take a look at that and you make a note of it, because it's just a little late for that not to have control of emotions like that, especially at school, where there's structure going on and.
And do you think if this child had been able to be on campus the past year and a half, that would have helped?
It might have been better. It depends on his living situation. He has a very complex living situation. It's not easy for anybody in the situation.
Do you think you had an easy childhood?
No. I mean, I think I had an easy childhood up until I was about 6, 7. See, my parents always worked, but my mother stayed home until I was about 6 or 7. I had 2 older brothers, but they were a lot older than me and already out the house. One was in the Navy and the other was out of school already. So in some ways, having them ahead of me, they kind of made it easier for me, because my parents were tired. My parents were older parents too. Like my mom was 38 when she had me, but my dad was 53. So they were kind of do what you want. And of course I took that to heart.
What did you want to do?
So I had to, but the bad thing was I had to, I couldn't run footloose and fancy free, the child services would have been called. But it was, for a time, my middle brother had to watch over me, and which really cramped him and his style. And even and I knew that even as a kid, but I saw that as a negotiable point, because he had a girlfriend up the street. I wasn't supposed to go out of the house at all, and I was riding my bike. My bike was like ticket to freedom. All I could ride was around the house. So I made a deal with him, and I said, well, how about if we agree that you could go see so-and-so, but you agree that I could ride the bike around the house? I said, fine, as long as you promise you don't go out of the yard, like I promised. Well, off he went to see his girlfriend, and off I went to ride my bike. But I was always one of those, I was kind of a tomboy at heart, I was doing tricks with my bicycle, and jamming the brakes so I could make skid marks, and that's what I was doing. I was making a donut in the backyard on the pavement, but crashed into the garage door. And I knew when I crashed, it was handlebars head first, that when I came off the bike, I heard the crack. And I thought, uh-oh. And I thought, So I got up, and I thought it was my glasses. But my glasses were intact. But my arm, my right arm, was broken. And it didn't look good for me, and of course it really hurt. So then my brother came home. Of course I got yelled at, like, what did you do? I got yelled at, and what are we gonna do? And I always came up with the plans too. I said, well, this is the deal. Let's tell Mommy that I was doing acrobatics in the living room, and I was doing, like rollovers on a stool or something, and I broke it that way. He said, okay, we'll do that. So my mother and father, who now both my mother and father owned a restaurant and a bar when I was young, and they used to work god-awful hours from 6 a.m. to like 1 a.m. in the morning. Long days. And so when she got home, because she did the driving, when I woke up the next morning and I went out into the kitchen, and I'm holding my arm, I'm holding it up. What's wrong with your arm? I said, oh, nothing. What's wrong with your arm? And she looks at it and she says, what did you do? And I said, well, I was making, I was doing some, gymnastics in the living room. And that went over really big, because the next thing I went to the family doctor first, Dr. Milano, who delivered all of us. And I'm there, and I'm saying, I can move my arm. I move my arm like this. He says, you can't move your arm. You can't do this, can you? And I said, oh, no. So I ended up in the hospital for 2 weeks with a busted arm, a bad break. My arm was a compound fracture, and it's never been straight since. And my mother, more than my father, was really concerned. It made more sense to me later on as I grew older that, they were probably worried that child services hadn't been called because of the way the fall was and the amount of damage that I did to my arm. But, I got better. What happened in the hospital was there was a chickenpox epidemic. Some kids in the ward came down with chickenpox, so we all were quarantined. And
that's why the 2 weeks.
That's why the 2 weeks. 1 week, I had to have surgery on a couple of days after I was in the hospital. I had to wait till the arm went down from the swelling, and then I had surgery. And then I got the chickenpox quarantine. But that went over, and then I was still there, but the kids that were all together that had been exposed to chickenpox, we still played together. And so we used to have wheelchair races. And of course, because I was right-handed, I couldn't really do that. So what I did was I just turned my wheelchair around and went backwards. And we had a grand old time there. And then it came time to leave, and years went by, and my mother never believed me for a long time. It was when she would not believe me. She didn't believe that I fell over
the armoire, what do you call it?
The hassock.
Yeah.
Until it slipped out one day. Then it was
slipped out one day. How does that happen?
I forget who it was, whether it was me or my brother who blabbed. But boy, did we get punished.
Wow.
We got punished.
That was like a year after?
More than a couple of years.
Really?
Yeah.
And she went hard.
Oh, yeah.
Even a couple years later.
Yeah, she did. And she was mean.
Wow.
She was mean. She would not forgive me for the longest time. And so that's when I learned quick, don't lie to Mama. Tell her the truth. But, it was okay. we got along as best we could, but my brothers were a lot older than me, so, you know, there was a lot of rumbles, a lot of teasing. You know, they used to love to hold me down and tease me, which I hated. I would do things like tell them what their presents would be wrapped under the Christmas trees, and I would say, oh, look what you got, so and so. You know, I could tell by the shape of the box or whatever it was, and why did you have to tell me? But, you know, we grew up and things went on, but we were never really close.
Really?
You know? Yeah, just certain periods of times. My older brother had kids, so that made us closer. And one of my brothers, my other brother, he had a very bad temper, so he scared me a lot. I always felt uncomfortable around him, and it was really interesting because he was at the height of, you know, it's like he was like movie star handsome. He had a girls' fan club in the high school that once they found out I was his sister, you know, they'd become my best friends. And they'd want to know what he did, where was he, and what did he do, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So...
Was this the middle brother?
The middle brother, yeah. And so he ended up marrying a woman that I loved very much, you know, but she died early of cancer, and it was just, he was always so black and white about things, you know, no gray area. Same with both my brothers, you know, very black and white, this way or that, or no way at all. And I always saw the variations of this, that, and it, or whatever, you know, and it's kind of hard when you have to make a decision, but because you're always questioning, you know, is this right, is this wrong, what should I do, what should I do? But that was a long time ago, you know, and I came out here, changed my life out here, decided that when I was 57 years of age and had worked for a long, long time at my job, I was going to leave my job and do something else, and I knew I didn't want to do office work. Fortunately, I had a degree already, so I didn't have to go back to college when I was in my late 50s. So I chose to go to grad school, and I went to grad school when I was 59, and I graduated when I was 63.
Oh.
And
With the counseling.
I got into counseling and psychology, which was kind of, I think, pretty much what I needed to do, you know, because I had enough experience with different types of disorders already, you know, with having dysfunctional parents and brothers who had anger management and that, you know, those kinds of things. It made me, you know, question who was I, you know, and how did all this affect me? And I just had this thing that, you know, I never, you know, I felt sad a lot of my life. You know, I felt depressed a lot of my life, and I wanted people to feel better about themselves. So I went to counseling and psychology and got a degree there. And that's pretty much how I function. I want my clients to feel good about being here, you know, and to understand that it's not always good, that it's, you know, sometimes it is good, sometimes it's not. But never to really find yourself in such a dark place that you feel worthless, or you feel like you have no rights to living, that, you know, why bother living? There's nothing to it. There's nothing for me. There's always something for you. You know, you just, I mean, I was lucky that I went to counseling I wanted to go to counseling and for myself when I was a teenager. But I grew up during the times that, and I grew up in a European family, and my father was from Poland. That kind of thing was never talked about, and it was always like a shame, because there was a reflection on the family that there's something wrong with you. But I knew when I was a teenager, I knew something was wrong with me because I used to be so sad all the time. And then finally, when I got out here to California in my late 20s, early 30s, I decided it was time. So I went shopping around for a therapist, which is interesting. And I had the experience of having one therapist and working well with her, but then she left, and because she was having the baby, and she didn't really give me enough time to kind of grasp what was happening, because it felt like I was being abandoned. It was like, oh God, what am I gonna do? And so I had to go and shop for another therapist, and I knew I wanted to work with a male therapist. And so I got recommendations from my primary care doctor and went to one of those doctors that just sat there and in the background just taking notes while you just randomly said whatever you wanted to. And I'm thinking, this isn't going to cut it for me. I need somebody to have some dialogue with. And I finally went to another doctor, and he was very engaging and just what I was looking for, and very challenging. It was very hard because, I had to look at things. We grow up for a long time believing our parents can do us no harm. I mean, that's like when you're a little kid, you just think your parents are the greatest. And so I had to come to terms with, your parents weren't the greatest, Paul. They did a good job with what they could do for you. But, they did some things that harmed you, that did some mental, that you need to do some mental cleanup on, some work on. So here I am now being a therapist, and I work a lot with kids, but I'm starting to get a lot more adults in my practice, which is good. Kids are good, but you really spend a lot of time with kids. They're so innocent. They'll say anything they want, but you have to get them to trust you too. Some kids are very forthcoming. They're probably very forthcoming at home, and so it's natural. But sometimes they'll come and they'll sit like nothing, and so I have to work hard to get them to trust me and that this is a safe place. You could tell me what's going on. And I use a lot of play therapy, and you could see a lot of what goes on in their heads using stuffed animals, playing games with them. You see how they share, which, if he's what toys they choose versus, other toys, things that are just kind of relevant. But they come with a lot of school behaviors that need to be attended to. And a lot of it, seems like in the last few years, a lot of it has been anxiety. Anxiety is like just increased in children. For the older grades, it's mostly on academics, like working hard, getting good grades. And they're only in 4th and 5th grade. Their book packs are like heavy. I can't even pick them up. And the younger ones are just learning to read cues, social cues, like just how to act, like appropriately.
Was the young man in the fight, was he cognizant enough to know, like to say to you clearly, I just wanted to fight?
That's what he told me.
Really?
Yeah.
And and from your experience, that was a honest answer.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he just wanted to fight. He probably woke up that morning just wanting to fight. I mean, don't you wake up sometimes wanting to fight too?
I guess, but it comes out differently. Like I put on hard music and feel rebellious.
Right. Or you go to gym class and you pound it out, or you play loud music, as you say, or you go for a run, you exercise.
Yell at people in my car.
Yeah. All those imaginary people. Just yelling out the car.
They're right in front of me. They cut me off. They drive slow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't, my husband gets really pissed off when he's driving, because he thinks drivers are so bad out here. If they don't use their turn signals, they don't do this, they don't do that, and it's like it's like, they're going to do that. You see that all the time. Why don't you just relax? Your blood pressure's going to go up. Just sit down and just enjoy. But it never fails. It's look at that guy. It's. But.
So, do you think your quality of life has gotten better in the past 20 years?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And what do you base that on?
I base that on. One, changing my environment, moving from a small town on the East Coast to coming to San Francisco, which wasn't as strange as it may sound, because I had friends living here. So it wasn't like I was coming cold. So I had friends that I moved in with, stayed with, and then got my own apartment. And it was, San Francisco, I just loved it from the day that I came here the first time. I just was smitten with it, and I wanted to move here. And I had a decent job that paid more money, and I had more of a social life here than I did back east. Back east, where I grew up, it was really, a lot of my classmates from high school, they were married by the time they were 21. I was 21. They were all settled and having kids, and I still was alone, and and I just felt like there was not much there for me to nurture myself. I wanted to go and do things, see different places, be with other people, just explore. And it's funny because I was the only daughter, and my brothers did the same thing. They married both at 21, and one had kids right off, the other didn't have children, but it was like the daughter that had to go and wanted to go explore. Yeah, and it was hard because my parents were elderly. And so I was leaving at a time that was not ideal, but no time would have been ideal. And my mother got it. I mean, she understood, but my father by then had developed dementia, so it was kind of difficult for him to understand. And it broke my heart, but I felt like if I wasn't going to make this change, I never would. And I don't think I would have had a very nice life back there. Not like here. And it wasn't like life was all hunky-dory perfect out here. It was when I decided to see a therapist, and there was a lot of hard work in therapy. I liked my job. I knew that I could do better. I wasn't feeling challenged. But having to weigh like a job that was very secure and paid well, and just give it up and go back to school, encounter student debt, it was like, did I really want to do this? That I did. I had to. I just felt like I had to. Plus, the winning thing for me was I was getting migraines from my job. I used to have to go to the city every week. I would be in the city. I'd leave my town at 6:30 in the morning to be on the bus, and then drive on the bus all the way to San Francisco and be at the office. I'd be there by 10 after 8 o'clock sometimes. So my day would start like pretty early. And this will probably sound strange to some people, but the more the office became, the more it became technically oriented, where so much was being done by technology, meaning that, a lot of the things like phone work, they had answering machines, my job just turned out to just be a straight word processing job. And I liked people. I liked, my skills wasn't in, how fast I could type or get something out the door. It was more in my management of how I conducted people, how I could read my boss and figure out, like, well, would this be a good client for him or not? Would this be a good client for the firm? I had just skills like that just were being cast aside. And I wasn't doing anything for myself other than being miserable. So I started getting migraines like 2-3 times a week. And I went to a doctor. I went to an acupuncturist. And I told him a little bit about myself. I talked to him about work. Well, there's your migraine stressor, Paula. You're not doing what you want to do. You're not spending any time on taking care of yourself. And so you're just stressed out all the time. And when I got migraines, my migraines they didn't just come and go. They would last 2-3 days. And all I could do was lay down on my bed and just in a dark room. I mean, even when when I was married, my husband would say, "Can I get you anything?" No. The best thing you can do is just leave me alone here. I just want peace and quiet. Just don't bother me. And sure enough, it was funny. I think when I started school, I maybe had one migraine, and I felt so bad about it because I had a paper due and I was sick as a dog with it, but I decided I had to get my paper in on time. And I drove to the school and I saw the professor there, and he said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I had to get this to you." "No, you didn't have to do that." But it was like an old dog that couldn't learn new tricks. It was just like that kind of time element had to be on time, or they weren't going to believe me that I was sick with headaches, say, or I was just faking it. But once I did away with that job, my migraines, I got a hold of my migraines. It was amazing because I was so sick from them. But once I removed myself, got myself into the position of doing something that I wanted to do for myself and liking it, it just, my quality of life just improved. And then of course I got married and we were able to get a house. So yeah, out here has been significantly better for me.
When's the last time you had a migraine?
Well, you would ask that. Well, I had, just about maybe, I was doing a part-time job as a school counselor at one of the school districts here. And And it was only for 2 days a week, but it was solid work, back-to-back client, and driving to school, from school to school, and doing just and having to prepare reports, and just a lot of stuff. It's not a matter of just sitting in the chair and listening. You do a lot of. I do anyway. I think I'm not at that point yet where my clients stay at the office when I leave. I'm thinking about them all the time. I'm not in touch with them unless they call me and they want something, but I'm thinking of them, like, I wonder, today he was going for a new job, I wonder how that went. So I started to get migraines because I felt the pressure, and I was also building my practice, my private practice, on top of working this other job. And then I took a third job, and it was just too much, and I started to get migraines again. So I had to give up my first job with the school district because it just wasn't making me feel good anymore about it. I was dreading going. I was losing interest. It wasn't, I had one specific duty to do as a therapist, as a school therapist, and it was not enough for me. I like the challenge of different people, different problems, learning new things, and I found I was restrained by, having this particular job in the school district. So somebody else, I just felt somebody could do it better. Somebody could be better than me. Somebody who didn't mind that repetition, but I don't do well with, I like security and everything, but I need to, I spend a lot of time alone too, but I need to be doing something, I'm always doing something, reading, thinking, listening to music or something, walking.
It sounds like in the original job before you went back to school,
mm-hmm.
and then just recently,
mm-hmm.
there was a repetition that created a mediocrity in your life.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So how do you define security that differentiates from mediocrity?
Well, one is I wake up in the morning and my heart is more joyous than dread, like I'm looking forward to the day. Thinking about new things to try with different clients or with this other school that I'm working at. They're much smaller, so it's a little easier for me because it's very small in comparison to the school I was at before.
Right. So is it possible the school you're at before, you said there was an element of inundation? There was
mm-hmm.
So you didn't have the personal, the
Not
time
so much,
for
no.
personal reflection
No,
on
I was always,
individuals?
I was always in an office, secluded someplace, and going to get my kids, bringing them back. And
so you're not even able to give them the kind of personal care you want to give them?
Well, I could, but I didn't have many outlets for me. Everybody was too busy. There were other counselors there, but everybody had such a load of kids to see or busy with something that I just didn't have the stimulation that I needed. For a time I belonged to a consultation group, which was great because we would just feed off one another. But even that went, with COVID, that had to stop. And most of us were Zooming therapists during COVID, and we really, unless something was really important and significant, we didn't want to be bothering Zooming at night. And you Zoom all day, you're tired. You're tired of it. You get tired fast.
Yeah.
And especially, with kids, because they want to play games, and if they have use of the controls, you're off. And just to keep them involved, I had to learn, how to play Minecraft and stuff like that. You could be inventive, but I'm a more visual person. And also I read body language a lot too. And that's important for therapy. You read a lot of body language and see how kids are sitting, how adults are sitting, or that kind of thing.
Do you find yourself in social engagements, like doing your therapy, like, all right?
No.
You really are able to let it go.
Within my social system, and I actually don't encourage it. I don't, because what will happen is you let it in. People find out you're a therapist, and it's like, oh God, then the next thing is, I wanted to ask your advice, and I don't want to be therapist to my friends.
Right.
I could give them some advice, but I can't act as a therapist. It's not good for the friendship. It just don't even go there. Don't even think about it.
You need to leave that guy. What the?
Get out very fast. Run.
The guy calls you. What are you telling her to get out? Thought we were friends.
Yeah, we're friends, all right. Yeah. So long, Joe.
Yeah.
No, so definitely my quality of life has picked up. And it may, sometimes I sometimes wonder, why did it take me so long? But
don't you think it's an evolutionary process, and you can only build upon what you have, right?
Yes, that's true. And there was, I didn't get encouragement. Yes, my family wanted me to go to college. I was going to be the only one that went to college. It seemed that it was almost like a sign of success back when I grew up, if somebody in the family went to college, and I was the one that was doing that. And but what was I going to do with it? I went to, and I got a liberal arts degree. What was I going to do with a liberal arts degree?
Well, you could do what I did. You wash dishes and become a waiter.
Well, yeah. I worked in enough offices, sold magazines a whole bit,
Yeah.
I did enough of that. But then what happened was, when I came out here, the pay in comparison to Connecticut was like night and day. I was a legal secretary, and you have to have some brains to be a legal secretary, because you're heavily relied on to keep dates and to keep clients happy. And I could do that just fine. And I had good bosses, that I learned a lot from. But if I didn't choose to go to school, and leave the office, what was I going to do? Go to another office and work? That didn't make any sense to me. I'd lose all my seniority. I had good bosses. I didn't want to go work for some awful boss. So it wasn't those things that did it. It was really my feeling of like, I needed to change my life. I knew that in order to do so, I had to go to school, and did it. I remember one of the questions that when I was interviewed for going to the graduate program of counseling psychology, one of the persons interviewing me, knew how old I was. And, why now, Paula? And I thought, why not now? It's better to have done it than to not have done it. I would feel, that was a big impetus for me. That was one of the things that really made me want to move and do something, because I knew I couldn't do it back then, because I was probably going to wind up being more of a caretaker for my parents and concentrating less on me and more on the care of them, which I would have done lovingly, but there was a strong part of me that, what about me? And so, yeah, no, I think the changes, and they were hard, but they were good ones. I can say I'm happy with my life. I'm satisfied with what I do. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot more to learn. I like having private practice. I also like being my own custodian of time. It's nice. Especially when you get older, it's nice to have some say in what you're going to do with your days instead of, oh God, I gotta get up. It's time to get up. I gotta get up now or else I'm going to be late. And the next thing you know, you're back to that schedule. And I started feeling really robotic about it, like just going in, coming home. Because, if you work where we live and going into the city, you're leaving sometimes in the nighttime and coming home in the nighttime, when the time clock changes.
Right.
So it was like days that you just don't come up for air. So it was like you'd be tired, go to sleep, get up, and start all over again. So I don't know how I feel sorry for people in the Bay Area that have to commute. They have to commute big time to buy a house or to keep a job, to make money, because they're facing, like, some people drive a couple of hours.
Yeah, and for hourly work.
Yes,
too.
And it's like, I couldn't do that. You're stuck in traffic all that time. I mean, you could take BART, you could take the Caltrans, and you could take the buses, but they break down, things happen. It's a lot easier to be able to make up your own day. Know what you have, know what you can schedule.
You were married before you started back to college, right?
Yes.
Has your experience as a counselor and learning changed your marriage relationship?
For the better, because I had an outside life. I had more to bring to the marriage. I may have, I used to wonder sometimes about, my husband didn't go to college. He's in the trades, and he's a smart guy, and I have nothing against people who don't go to college, because not everybody needs to go to college. You don't need it to be smart. I've met enough stupid people that have lots of that it's like, give me a break, will you? So what I was concerned about how he felt with me going to college. Like, would he feel like threatened by it, but we had, we discussed it, and he said no, and he's not really somebody that does feel threatened by it, but he was very supportive and very proud when I graduated, and so it was all good. It's been all good.
Do you find yourself reflecting from a space of like the autumn of your years, thinking, well, we're coming to a close here?
Sure. Yeah. As each year passes. Yeah, I think it's normal. I think it's like when you see a schoolmate and you see that they died, it's like, she was in my high school, she's a year older than me. I remember she didn't like me, but, beside that, she was...
God bless her, good riddance, but...
But, it was like, oh gosh, now we're getting into the dates that, yeah, my turn is coming. I'm not going to live here for another, I could live for another 35 years. But still, what I don't want is, and which scares me, is I don't want to be like an invalid in my old age, or my mind to go. And I've seen that, and that is a horrible life. And I don't care how surrounded you are by loved ones. It's very hard for them too, because they don't understand, where have you gone? Where are you? You're still in there. I mean, the person is still in there, but he's no longer available to as you know them. And that's very hard to deal with.
And when you say you're scared, like really? Like, do you have bouts of real psychological trepidation?
I think I just feel like, I hope I get enough in. I hope I do enough.
So what else do you want to do?
Well, I could become more specialized in psychology, like work in certain things. I mean, there's a lot of different theories of psychology that I could become more adept at.
You don't
I'd like
have
to,
anything specific right now?
No, maybe more mind and body stuff.
The connection of mind and body?
Yeah. Because I see it more and more with people that come to see me, that they complain about, they have these aches and pains, and now I have a new saying, like, the issues are in the tissues, and I know that's where all your stress goes. And unless you start, kind of acknowledging that it sits someplace in your body, whether it's your neck, and for me it's in my neck. Some people it's in their gut. Some people it's their legs. Used to be in my head, migraines.
Right.
Maybe something like that. Or
do you have a physical practice that you do?
I do. It depends on the person. Some people are...
No, like for yourself.
For myself. Yeah, I do some meditation. I do some stretching and stuff. But I have to say that I was really lazy during COVID. I have to admit that. I was really lazy, and I keep thinking I've got to get back to it, and I will.
One of these days.
Before my legs give out or something.
I was talking with a gentleman at Pure yesterday, and he was talking about how we're not good at agreements with ourselves. We're really good at agreements with others. And as an example, like if I have an agreement with him to meet him at a certain time, I'll be there.
Right.
But if I say, well, I'm going to go for a walk tomorrow, and tomorrow comes, and I'm like,
That is so true. I'll be there on time with time to spare. Sometimes I even have to kind of go around the blocks a couple of times, so I'm too early. But when it comes time to apply it to myself, like, let's go 9:30 tomorrow, let's just get up and go.
Right.
It's like, oh God, the bed feels so comfortable, nice and warm.
See, so it's almost like from a psychological perspective, we need to make ourselves as important as we've made others.
Definitely. And I think it's hard for us. I think it's hard for many of us, because I think there's so many of us that that didn't get that kind of growth or nourishment when they were kids, and it stays with them for however long it may stay with them. And and it doesn't take much. I find that, here I go on, now I'm going to go on to another kind of thing that bothers me, is etiquette. I think etiquette is gone in these days. People really catch your eye when you walk by them, or if you say hello, they might walk by you. Now that could be COVID, they don't want you to breathe on them or something. But
just keep your 6 feet.
That's right. Or people are very aggressive driving, like if they can beat you to the stop sign, they're going to,
See, now I, for myself, wonder if that's more of my own perspective. Like you're telling your husband, if I'm in a state of just relax, chill out, then people aren't aggressive. They're just driving. But if I'm in a state of heightened, like, gotta get there, or just...
That rubs off on me.
Well...
It just kind of, it's like, now I'm nervous,
But see, that's part of what I've been reflecting on lately, is fully responsible for our inner life. So... Why go and take that on? Right. If I am taking it on, what's really happening is it's in me.
Right.
So there's an opportunity to...
Right. It's really practicing mindfulness.
Right.
Watching yourself.
Right.
Being present right now, not this afternoon, not early this morning, or not what you're going to do over the weekend, but right now. And it's really moment to moment to moment, because if you go too far, you're going to be what's coming next. So it's really just on the present moment. And that's kind of hard for me too. I think it's hard for everybody. We're just a get up and go kind of, we live that kind of culture. I mean, people just zip in their cars and go, and everybody's got to be on the go. Kids have play dates back to back to back to back. It's like, I couldn't do that. I even as a kid, I wouldn't want to be dragged to a play date after play date after play date. I would want some time to myself. Because you need time to yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else that...
Not today.